Resident Evil Code Veronica is an interesting entry in this long-run franchise. I think it's a little bit of the weakest part up to this point, but at the same time, it is an entertaining video game. And for fans of Resident Evil, many of them have said this is one of the best games in the series. While I personally don't think it's a great game, it's still very entertaining for what it is. So, taking place 3 months after the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Claire Redfield is looking for her brother Chris when she is captured and sent to a remote prison island where she has to survive an outbreak. So Chris gets involved, he finds Claire, and from there is one of the weakest entries of this franchise up to this point. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a horrible game. I actually think it's pretty good, even over 20 years later. But looking back at it, I realized some of the gameplay mechanics haven't aged that well. It feels similar to the previous 3 installments. And not only that, there is a main character in this game that actually makes this one not as scary compared to previous entries, and that character is Alfred Ashford.
Have it your way then. You're just a rat in a cage anyway. I'll be sure to keep you entertained before I dispose of you. Welcome, Claire. Consider the area you are in a special playground I have prepared just for you. Please try and keep me amused, and do not disappoint me by dying too soon. I so want to enjoy this.
Yeah, I cannot take that character seriously because he acts too damn goofy. And not only that, but the villains, the Ashford twins, are they great antagonists compared to Albert Wesker? I would say no because Alfred ends up dying early on in the game, and Alexia, she doesn't have a strong enough performance for her to be considered one of the best Resident Evil villains of all time. Though I do give credit with this game being the first in the series to use real-time 3D environments, unlike the pre-rendered backgrounds of the previous 3 installments. But an interesting fact that I have found out about this one was there was a demo version of a fan remake that was released in 2021 before it was shut down a year later by Capcom. Nonetheless, when it comes down to it, I think this game is overrated. It came out a few years before the exceptional Resident Evil 4. Plus, it's just more of the same. Capcom didn't do too much to change the formula, and so this one feels quite stale. And while it's not a dumpster fire, it really doesn't stand out compared to the other games in this franchise. Now, when it comes to the characters, Claire and Chris Redfield, their bond is strong as ever, with this being the first game that features them too. It's unfortunate they didn't appear in any future games together, because I think that the duo between them, how strong they are as brother and sister, it works quite well. What I didn't like about this game though, character-wise, was Steve. I despise this character. Seriously, he's a whiny pansy boy. Like, he's always complaining, he always thinks he's tough. And then this love story that he had with Claire came out of nowhere, might I add. It just felt odd. He's certainly one of the most forgivable characters in the franchise. Now, the Ashford twins, I thought they were interesting despite how damn goofy Alfred Ashford was. Seriously, I couldn't take him as a real threat. He's dressing up as his sister, he's talking in these high-pitched voices. And not just that though, but when the second half of the game happens, when you switch over to Chris Redfield, I thought maybe his involvement could have been a little bit better. Now, Albert Wesker being in this game, it was nice seeing him again considering he hasn't been seen since the first game. And not just that though, but the rivalry between him and Chris, it really bowls over. It doesn't reach Resident Evil 5 kind of bowling over, but it does get there, and this is the catalyst of that. And speaking of which, the re-release of Code Veronica X, that's the one I did play. And what I will say is that not much is added to it, just a few cutscenes, and maybe a battle game, or maybe it was an original, I can't really remember, but overall I think that is a nice update. Plus, there are rumors there could be a remake that happens one day. I mean, might as well. The first 3 games in the franchise gotten remakes. Why not this one? That plus Claire Redfield hasn't been to many Resident Evil games since this one came out so long ago. This game has its fans out there. And I will say that if you haven't checked this one out and you're a fan of the franchise, then you could give it a try because there is some fun replay value within this one. I'm giving this video game a 6 out of 10. You know, this one's alright, nothing too special, and honestly, if they would have changed a lot more about it, then this one would have been one of the better video games of this franchise. Now, what kept it from being an outright disaster was the story. It is somewhat interesting, learning about the Veronica virus, and just seeing Chris and Claire Redfield deal with the Ashford twins and their old nemesis, Albert Wesker, as well. But it still doesn't feel as special compared to some of the other games, which are much better in my opinion. And that is my review of Resident Evil Code Veronica. Alright, leave your comments down below in the section and let me know what you think about this video game. My review of Resident Evil 4 is coming next year, and speaking of that game, it will change the franchise in a big way during the time when it was released all those years ago. Okay, this is Slim Guy 172 saying peace out.